Hey survivors and thrivers, it's sophilialarkwoodbury of thehappymedium.com. So what happens when a gold standard treatment such as EMDR doesn't actually do the job to help you heal? This video is going to reveal why EMDR by itself doesn't work and what approaches actually work to help you successfully navigate your journey through complex PTSD, so keep watching. For the best trauma recovery tips, tools, and strategies, be sure to hit that subscribe button and click the notification bell so that you'll never miss a video when I upload new content every single Wednesday. Hey everybody, welcome back. If this is your first time here, I am a survivor of complex trauma, a licensed professional counselor, a trauma recovery coach, and a certified clinical trauma specialist, helping people and organizations resolve the effects of trauma and build resilience. So EMDR is a trauma-focused treatment that uses its own phase approach to primarily treat single event traumas. But when it comes to complex PTSD, which is a repeated trauma over a prolonged period of time, typically in the context of an interpersonal relationship, I know from my own experience as a survivor of complex trauma and complex PTSD, as well as from the stories of other people who struggle with complex PTSD, that EMDR by itself just doesn't reach far enough into the deeply rooted issues of complex PTSD symptoms. And so what actually works then? Can you actually recover with EMDR? And I think the answer is yes, but research actually supports a phase-based model approach to treat complex PTSD. And if you didn't watch my video on the first-line interventions for complex PTSD treatment, I'll link it here in the cards, and I'll also put a link to it in the description where you can watch that video. I think it'll give you a little bit more information that I'm going to give you here. But that's what research supports, a phase-based treatment approach. Now, this can include EMDR, but typically the first phase of this phase-based approach, so there's three phases, and in the first phase, there's going to be significant work that needs to be done up front before you can even dive into EMDR. So we're talking about addressing issues such as emotion dysregulation problems, relationship difficulties, self-esteem issues, dissociation, somatic distress in the body, negative belief systems. So just by naming those things, I can think of at least 3 therapies that need to be applied. So you can already see that EMDR is not enough. So when we're talking about this, that first phase is really about stabilizing the person and strengthening the skills that they will need to go into the trauma processing part, which is EMDR. So it's like, why would you start processing the trauma when you don't even have the skills and the ability to be able to understand why this is going to make sense for you? Now, I know EMDR has a preparation phase where they assess and take a history and assess for resources, but those resources are more about grounding yourself and being able to breathe and people that you can rely on and all those kinds of things, which are good and which they are a part of that sort of upfront work that needs to be done in phase 1. But there are some things that EMDR doesn't target before it jumps into the memory processing. And those things like dissociation. EMDR can apply treatments that address that. But a person who significantly, who spaces out all the time and they can't really benefit from trauma processing, there needs to be specific work done, particularly internal family systems work, where you're addressing the different parts of yourself and trying to bring those parts back together, where you can help yourself not space out so much. There's other treatments for that too. Then addressing the significant negative beliefs pumped up by what you call an inner critic and an outer critic. And so those things need to be addressed. You need to be able to properly grieve the losses that you experience as you were trying to survive the horrific trauma that you were going through when you were younger. And so all of those things need to be in place. I think most importantly is psychoeducation. A person understanding how trauma has conditioned them, how complex trauma has conditioned them, has essentially rewired the brain. And so you think a certain way, you feel a certain way, you relate to other people a certain way, because of this sort of indoctrinated cultic-like process. You've been conditioned to think a certain way because your brain has been wired with a traumatic trajectory. And so a person understanding that complex PTSD is a learned thing. It's a learned stress disorder. And if I can learn it, I can unlearn it. That can make a world of difference for a person. And so now they believe in themselves. They believe that they can learn what they need to learn to start processing the trauma. And that is the biggest thing that I've seen in terms of a person being able to have the motivation and the belief in themselves that they can actually do the work and that nothing is really wrong with them. They're not really flawed, but they were just responding in a way, the best way that they could. They were essentially forced to adapt in this dysfunctional way, to start responding from that sympathetic hot system where they're constantly on threat and they feel like they have to be bracing for something that's coming. They have this sense of dread. But if you can unlearn those negative, dysfunctional, adaptive behaviors and replace those with health promoting behaviors, then that can make the difference. And so that's what phase 1 would teach a person. And then you hop in to phase 2. Phase 2, this is where the actual trauma memory processing happens. So we've done that significant work up front of stabilizing and strengthening the skills of the person through psychoeducation, helping them to cognitively restructure some of those negative beliefs, maybe to decrease dissociation, to decrease the distress in their body. And so now they have the skills to be able to move into this next phase where they're processing those unresolved memories, those memories that sort of have been locked in place as unprocessed. And so now they're opening up that box to really go through the details of the trauma, what happened, what they did to survive, and where they are now, and them trying to get to the other side. This is where that significant work will really help to be that foundation for them, especially when they start to become overwhelmed. They start seeing the person or the situation that they were in, and they start to feel really distressed. They'll be able to use those resources and that understanding that they gained first to be able to get through and process the memory fully and resolve it. Here's another reason why I think EMDR doesn't work too, especially even when you get into the memory processing part of it, and it may take another type of therapy to help resolve this. Another reason that EMDR doesn't work is because for a lot of clients, some of the aspects of protocol that EMDR involves can hamper the process. Some aspects of EMDR, like negative cognitions and positive cognitions and validity of cognitions and subjective units of distress, it stops the process because it's asking a person to say, okay, I know you've been doing all this processing, but can you rate on the scale of this, 1 to 10, how you feel it in your body, or how true that thought is for you right now that you're a lovable person or whatever. And a person's really going like, I really don't have anything positive to say right now. I'm trying to get through this memory. Or how do I know? I know it says subjective, but if I say it's a 10, maybe it's really a 4. And why are we talking about this anyway? And I think a lot of people tend to think that that's irrelevant. It's kind of insensitive. It feels like the therapist is more committed to the protocol than they are to personalizing that treatment for the person that is sitting right in front of them, instead of trying to apply this broad sweep, this one-size-fits-all type of approach. And I think that turns some people off. And so that's another reason why EMDR may not work. And the final phase is transitioning and thriving. This is where you're going to use the skills and the knowledge and the understanding of all that you've learned in therapy and take out into society, into your living community. This is beyond therapy, so this is planning for when you leave. This can include preparing for a new job or a new career change, going back to school, or going to school for the first time. It could also include things such as what you're interested in. So the thing about recovering from complex PTSD is now you're beginning a new way of life. So you're creating new beginnings, new opportunities, things that you didn't get to learn because you were busy surviving. Now this is the time to start implementing some of those things. And so whatever those things are for you, this is a part of your transition plan. So put those in there. Maybe you can even prepare for or plan for refresher sessions, therapy sessions that you may need to address a new life issue. Maybe it wasn't something that you addressed when you were in therapy, but now something else has come up and you don't quite know what to do about it. And so you can add that to your plan, like if this happens, this is who I can call, I can contact. And it may not even be a therapist, it may just be a coach, or it might be your best friend or whoever. So that really is how you get through and recover from the symptoms of complex PTSD. You go through the initial phase of stabilization, and you go through the therapy and successfully process those memories, however long that takes, and then you plan for the rest of your life. And that's basically it. All right, well, that will do it for today. Thank you very much for joining me today. If you liked this video, be sure to show some love by hitting that like button, share with your friends, and comment below to let me know what your biggest takeaway was. What you learned today. If there's something that you can share with your friends, be sure to do that. And last but not least, be sure to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button. Click that notification bell so that you will always be in the know when I upload a new video every single Wednesday. I appreciate your support today, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.